Whether you're thinking about quitting your job, starting a side hustle, or just curious about the realities of being your own boss, this podcast explores the possibilities of being unemployed for a living. Okay, so I asked Cory, hey, how are we gonna start this thing? He's like, how about something like, I'm Ken, I'm Cory, so hey, I'm Ken, that's Cory over there. Welcome back to Unemployed for a Living. And excited. Episode 3, we're going to get into this. Last week's episode, we talked about how we kind of got to this point of being self-employed, being
did a biography episode.
It was pretty much, for the most part, our history of kind of a job history. And we found out that Cory and I are completely different paths.
Yeah, we just found that out last week.
Yeah, it hasn't been an ongoing thing up to this point. Cory has had many different experiences in job history, and I was more of a career sort of a guy. I had one job for a lot of years, but we both got to this point and we had to start making decisions of what we were going to do.
We made a lot of decisions along the way, it sounds like. Well, I know I have made a lot of decisions along the way. And I know you did too. Sure. I mean, every day you stayed at your job was a decision, you know.
True.
And the stakes are high.
I was happy to stay. I was happy to stay at my job. I didn't have,
foolish.
I was going to be there probably till I retired. And that was kind of a theme in some of the comments that we had on last week's show, is that, some people went into self-employment in reselling or different, the decisions that they made because they were either laid off from a job, which was one of the reasons that you had done that. Another comment, Tina at the Lake Exchange had said that she had an unplanned retirement 6 years ago and hasn't looked back.
I believe there was one other one too, right? Was it Cajun? Did he have a layoff too?
Yeah, Chris Cajun, reseller.
I think that proves our point that there's no security in a 9-to-5 job. It is a false sense of security.
It can be for sure. But so we thinking about that with, there are a lot of decisions. And what are some of the things that go into that decision making of being self-employed, staying in that security net of a full-time
I don't even know
job?
if it's so much what goes into the decision. I think it's getting comfortable with being the decision maker.
Yeah.
I think that's what I see most people struggle with when they start working for themselves, is they're not comfortable being the person that has to make that decision. So there's no safety net anymore. There's not a supervisor or an owner of the business to say, we're going this direction or we're going that direction.
Yes.
Like, that person is now you. And I know you probably struggled with that. I know I struggled with it through several different businesses.
As I talked, last week. And if you want to hear about that job history, go look at last week's episode. We would appreciate that. Give it a thumbs up and a like. And
resumes are on episode 2.
Yes, episode 2. It's not having those, because I had left my job by my choice and with no plan. And so when it came up to those times of making those decisions, where do you turn? What do you do? How do you go about that? And that's, Cory and I talked to, during the week, what are some of those decisions? And in the 9-to-5 job, you have that security net. Decisions are in your job. Usually you have a boss, usually you have a supervisor or somebody that's,
I think that was one of the things you said you missed about the 9-to-5, if I remember right, is the fact that you could go home and punch out at 5, and those big decisions, while they played on your mind because you're a manager, ultimately they weren't yours. They were somebody else's. Exactly. And you kind of missed that about the job. And I really do think this part, like this making decisions and being capable, getting good at it, is really the part that stumbles a lot of people or keeps a lot of people out of being self-employed.
Exactly.
At this point, my wife, well, pretty much everybody in my life, when they see me make decisions, they think I'm psychotic because I don't I'll start a business with someone. We'll have a conversation and they'll be like, would you like to invest a bunch of money and start this business tomorrow? And if I think it sounds like a good idea, I'm in. Let's do it. What's the domain? We'll go buy it. I make decisions very quickly based on their merits.
And I do not. I'm very slow and methodical at decision making. But I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear in making that decision if you're going to be self-employed. To There's, I think one of the biggest ones is the fear of failure. What if
Yeah. What if
I
it doesn't work?
leave a 9 to 5? What if I, again, sometimes that leaving the 9 to 5 was thrust upon you, wasn't your choice, wasn't your decision, but now you have to make that decision. Are you going to stay in the regular workforce? Are you going to do something for yourself? And it's that fear of making that wrong decision, and that failure
That's a
that
callus that you could build up. But you work every day with your hands get stronger. That really is a callus you could build up. And I think over the years, as our lifestyle changed, my
uh-huh.
risk tolerance changed because at a certain point I had young kids at home and
Yeah.
we were paycheck to paycheck, and decisions are heavier at that point because you have
Oh,
to weigh it on
yes.
a different scale. But now it's me and Teresa, and yes, we have a nice place and we're on 10 acres and we love it here and we have a lot to lose. But if I lost it, I'm still eating lunch tomorrow. Like, okay.
True.
Like
Yeah.
I'm very tolerant to risk at this point in my life. What's the worst can happen? I mean, if it's not going to harm someone in my family in a meaningful way, if I can go rent a place that's 800 square foot and me and Teresa are happy, then who cares?
True. Yeah. And I mean, that's part of that risk tolerance. And you'll probably hear that theme, in this show a lot, because that plays a lot on it. And we're gonna talk about that a little bit more in a little bit later in this episode. So,
Well, maybe I
but
kind of
that
jumped ahead, didn't I?
you did right away. Right away.
Well,
You jump.
I blame it. I blame it on a cold. Teresa's been sick all week, and now
Okay.
right today she passed it off to me. So I've got my OJ, and I've got my
Okay.
cough drops, and I'm trying to hold it together, but a little brain fog. So this
Every
episode is probably going to not be good. So Ken's
every
got to
time I
carry it.
every time I would make Cory chuckle when we were like pre-show, he was
Coughing.
he's
I'm trying to hold it back. I'm trying really hard.
one of the things in that decision that we were talking about is there are so many options, so many factors that go
There can
into
be.
it, where you kind of get that, you kind of paralyze yourself. You kind of get that over analysis paralysis. There you go. I've heard that term
Yep.
before. You kind of
Or decision
overthink stuff.
paralysis.
Yes.
Same general thing. I mean, I think we compared it to going to a buffet and having 40 different kinds of mashed potatoes. Which one do you
Yeah.
try? Like,
All of them.
if what if you can only have one? You can only go one direction. Like, where do you start? Like, a lot of people get hung up on that.
Yeah.
And that's, again, I think it's a skill that you build. I don't think you come out of a 9 to 5 job after 20 years and you're just good at that. I think
Yeah.
that's a skill you have to build up. And I do think it takes time. And the reason I think it's a skill is because I think it directly relates to just being confident in yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. Well, yeah,
you have to trust yourself.
a a big part of it, because I know I'm an overthinker. I'm an
Mm.
overthinker myself, and I will, and in a lot of decisions I try to think it all the way through, every possible scenario, and then when I go to reach out to talk to somebody to maybe get a mentor or somebody else that might be in the same situation or has experienced the same situation, um, the very first thing they always say, it's like, "Oh, I hadn't thought about that," and then that just compounds my problem of now I've got more to think about
You
with
do you do what I used to do a lot, and I still do this sometimes. I'm very guilty of this. I will try to flesh out an idea, a decision,
uh-huh,
down to the finest possibilities, and
yeah,
I will talk myself out of great ideas. Like, by the time
yes,
I'm all done, I will have talked myself out of taking the risk. Like,
yeah,
it isn't gonna work. There's too many variables. There's too many things going on.
yeah,
And I'll talk myself out of it rather than just saying, "This is a great idea and I have nowhere to start, but
yeah,
I'm just going to put one foot forward and do something."
yes. Which we were talked about that, some of the things to overcome that, and we talked about like an 80% rule. If you're at least 80% confident and you're sure, perfection isn't required. You don't
No.
have to know everything, but it's still you're trying to make a smart decision.
See, and
Whether, I guess,
if you're very analytical and you're very unsure,
yeah,
that 80% rule you're talking about actually does give you a little bit of confidence. What's the chances this is going to go the way I hope it goes? And if you're 80%
yeah,
sure, go ahead. But if I had done that I don't think I would have started half the businesses I've started or
Uh-huh.
made it as far as I did make it in the businesses I started because I was never 80% sure. It was always a flip of a coin. Actually, the odds were against me most of the time. I was just
And
willing
so,
to take the risk.
so again, that gets to the risk tolerance, but how do you, and I think for me, it would be that fear of it not working out that would keep me from doing it. Not so much thinking through an idea to where I kind of paralyze myself with it, or even that
I
80%
think
confidence rule. It's the fear and how to get past that.
I think the only way you're going to get there is to build the confidence. You have to
Yeah.
trust yourself. And I don't mean trust yourself to make the decision, although that is a big part of it. I mean, you have to trust
Yeah.
yourself that if you make a decision, you're going to follow through. You don't
Yes.
you don't have to draw out a business plan for the next Fortune 500 company. Nobody starts that way. Apple didn't start that way. Microsoft didn't start that way.
True.
They
Yeah.
started in a garage trying to solder two pieces of crap together. Like
Yeah.
commit, like know yourself and trust yourself to solder the two pieces of crap.
Well,
That's all the further you have to go.
nobody really has more confidence in me than me, hence I have delusions of grandeur, Corey.
That's not
If
true
you
though. That's not
that's
true. I know you well enough to know that's not true. You do have delusions of grandeur, but you're also
yeah.
you talk yourself out of things because you overthink it and you talk yourself out of it thinking you're not going to be able to do it when you
Yeah.
could do it. You totally could do half the stuff we've
Sure.
talked about. You could have pulled off if you had just taken the first step instead of trying to figure out the last step.
Which is always what I do. I try to figure out that last step, and I think a lot of people probably do that too. And that's what makes the decision so difficult.
Mhm.
Is they try to work it out to the end. I'm trying to do better at that, and I mean, I could. Who knows? Maybe some
Well,
of
and
the
that
decisions would have
there's
would have failed at this point.
there are some ways you can kind of handle that. I think like what works for me, and I don't know if it works for you because we're so different. Like it may
Yeah.
completely crash your process, but for me, if I see a big project, I have an idea. I want to start this company.
Yeah.
I think it all the way through too. Like I can't find every possibility, but I'll commit
Yeah.
to starting the company and then I'll draw as much of it out on the board as I can and break it into tiny chunks. What can
Okay.
I do right now? I want to start this company tomorrow. I could buy a domain name. Takes 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Then once I buy the domain name, I've got momentum. I've got confidence. I did one thing right. I bought a domain name. Now I can go build the website. And that
Yeah.
for some people that's a big project. For me, I could build a website in an hour or two and have the domain attached to it. So that's one more step that I've accomplished and I've got that much more
Yeah.
momentum. But if I break it into little chunks,
And
it, it
I
it's
guess
a
when you're
confidence builder more than it is, you know,
when
a
you're saying that,
process.
that sounds like really big aspirations, companies and domain names and stuff. And I'm thinking more of the people that are just trying to make a decision of, I have this skill set, or I want to get into, like what we do, and the background that I have from as far as my self-employment is reselling. I want to get into reselling. I want to do that, or maybe I'm handy with woodworking or something like that, and I want
Yeah,
to. It's like, man, how can I turn this? And that's not really. Those are the people that I think, not so much the ones that are trying to build big companies.
right.
And I think that's a difference, because you think of it a lot from the full on company um, mindset. Am I correct in that? Am I correct in saying that? And not so
I
much
tend to look.
hey, I can take this little small thing. I can, I'm pretty good at mowing lawns. I could do that for a living. And that doesn't take a big company and a domain name and
Right. I do tend to
all of
look a
that.
bit more in the future. The part that I skip is all the middle stuff. Like I don't
Okay.
care how to get the lawnmowers and how to get customers and how to learn how to water and
Yeah.
fertilize the yard. If I want to have a big landscaping company and I'm over here with $12 and nowhere to start, I
Yeah.
see the big landscape company. I say, what's the first thing I can do to get there? Well, I'm gonna go find a lawnmower I could borrow, and then I'm gonna go talk to my neighbor. So all the stuff in the middle, I don't worry about until I hit that.
Okay.
Not always. Like I'm guilty of overthinking stuff like everyone else, but usually I try to force myself out of the middle. I I wait for the
Okay.
problems to come to me rather than going to them. I know
But
I'm going to come up with problems in the middle. I'll just
isn't
deal with
most
them
of
when
the
I do.
time isn't most of the time though, the middle is where a lot of the
Yeah,
people are going to fall with this, and
it
you
is,
have
but
to think about that middle.
that's the thing about being a business owner. A lot of people think, like with what we do right now, one of the things that we do is we're resellers, right?
Yeah.
So we think we're resellers. That's what we are. We're not. We own a business. We're problem solvers. Every single day we get up and we solve a problem. I have packages to ship. I got to solve a problem. I have a customer mad. I got to solve a problem. I have a
Yeah.
return that needs to be done. I got to solve a problem. Like as a company owner, that's all you are, is a problem solver. And
Okay.
as long as you're comfortable with that, you don't have to figure out the middle because you know the shit's going to come. You just solve the problems when they come rather than going looking for them.
Yeah, but I think, some of the focus that we were going to talk about here is getting to that, making that decision to get to the point that I am a reseller. I am starting my
That's
reselling,
the
or I am
decision.
starting my lawn mowing. And that's the decision.
You got to be
Um,
able to make that decision to start.
yes.
You
And I
have
guess
to,
that's the
and that comes from confidence. That's it. Like if I was going to be a reseller and that decision, I'm leaving my 9 to 5 job, I want to be a reseller. First, don't leave your 9 to 5 job. You can't just,
yeah.
no business that I've ever started gave me enough money to live off of in the first 6 months. None, bar none.
Oh,
Like I've never had one.
yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
you could probably go start selling drugs or something, but I'm not going to promote that. But don't do that. But none of
Yeah.
them I've ever started have given me a livable wage in the first 6 months. So don't quit your job.
True.
Start reselling by sign up for an eBay account. Like
Yeah.
start small and build some confidence because that's what it, I mean, that's what it takes. You
Yeah.
have to build the callus. You have to build your confidence and trust yourself. So do the smallest thing you can think of.
Yeah. Or if you were in those situations, like some of the comments that we read, and in my situation, it was didn't have that 9 to 5. However,
Yeah.
I made that decision based on the fact that I had a nest egg or a financial situation at the time where I could do that. I could um make decisions or take time to make decisions and take time to start making money from those
But
decisions.
you put yourself in a situation where you had a lot of pressure because you then waited till January and you had a backup fund, so you were okay. You weren't going
Yeah.
you weren't going to starve. But come January, then you were like, okay, now I need to do something. And I did something similar to that. I sold a business that had backup money and gave myself
Yeah.
time to find the next thing. But at a certain point, then you're under a lot of pressure. Like now I have to find that thing
Yes.
and I have to get it making enough money to feed me and pay for my family's
Yes.
bills. And now I'm on a time crunch. That's not the best way to do it. I mean,
No.
if you're like me, that's the best way to do it because I work really good
Yeah.
under pressure and I don't work at all when I'm not under pressure.
Yeah.
I
Well, and if I
procrastinate.
had I not been secure enough
Yep.
with that decision, whichever, it just so happened I chose reselling because I had good mentors. I had people that
Yeah.
were going to be able to guide me, to help me out, somebody that I could call and go, oh no, this happened. What am I
That's a
supposed to
good
do?
point too.
Did you see my old timey phone there, Cory? With the
I did.
pick up the landline.
Was it
Called
the dial around one?
yeah.
The rotary phone?
I got to ship this today, and why does
Or does
his
it pick
number
up the
have all
knob?
nines in it? Yeah, numbers like 999 999 00
No,
in
you
the
made
end.
a good point. If you have to make a decision and you don't have the confidence to do it, find
Yeah.
mentors. Find an outside source that you can trust. They don't even have to
Yes.
know anything about the business. They just have to know your situation. Just don't let outside sources make decisions for you. Like find mentors you can trust and you can lean
Yes.
on. Find somebody in the
Yes.
community
Great.
that you want to get into, but never let an outside source discourage you from making a decision if it's pointing towards the direction you want to go. Figure out how
Yeah.
to get there. Don't let a good example is a family member. If I talk to any of my family, they're like, don't do any of
Yeah.
that. Like everything I've ever done, like don't do any of that.
True. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, exactly. Getting into reselling, people don't always understand what you're doing. It's like, wait, you're going to go to yard sales and you're going to put this stuff on eBay and you're going to sell it, and
Yeah, just go get a
and
job.
yeah, just why don't you go? And the struggles of when you're not selling
Yep.
stuff, and those family members or those close people to you see, because not every month is a stellar month, and what are you going to do? You should get a regular job. You should go get some security, something that's going to pay
And
the
there may be a
insurance or pay the
time,
bills, and
I mean, there may be a time when that decision is forced on you where you have to
yeah,
decide when's the right time to pivot, when's the right time to call it. Like this
yeah,
isn't working. I'm not saying be bullheaded and not listen to anybody and just go broke and homeless. Sometimes you do have
yeah,
to pivot, and that's another hard decision. But don't let people discourage you. I guess that's why you have to figure out what your why is. Why are you going 9 to 5, quitting the 9 to 5? Why are you working for
True.
yourself? What are you trying to do? And once you know that, it's way easier to work towards and not be
Yes.
discouraged by the naysayers. Because everybody wants you to do good till you do better than them. And none of your family is going to understand what the hell's going on. They're all going to think you're crazy. And that's usually how you know it's
And
working.
well, and unless you're doing something so obvious that, that you're mowing lawns, or you're going to do so they can see you out there cutting the grass, or they can see, how
I've
many
done
jobs you had that day.
obvious stuff like that before. Like most of
Yeah.
them don't understand. Like, why don't you just go work at Kinko's? Like, why don't you go
Yeah.
work at a lawn service company then? And
Yeah.
a
Rather
lot of
than
them,
taking that risk.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's,
Why would you
where
take
we're
that
at risk
risk? That's the thing.
tolerance. And we'll get to
And I
risk
think it's
tolerance here in a
coming.
second.
I think it's coming from a place of love. I'm not saying your family's all
Oh,
a bunch of
sure.
jerks. I think it's coming from a place of love. They want you to do well, but
Yes.
they don't
They don't
see
want
it like it.
they don't want to support me. We're gonna quit asking me for money,
Yeah,
Ken. Simmer down. That's
they don't they don't want
We're
you
broke
moving
too.
in.
Yeah. But I guess one of the things that is always helpful to me. You talk a lot about that you whiteboard. You put a whiteboard on
Yeah,
on
one
everything,
there.
and and I have whiteboard right here. Shout out
Oh, that's
I
right.
flipped that.
I do have my little one too.
And but just making a pro and con list.
Mhm.
Sit down, take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50, take a day, whatever it takes. But pro and con, what are some reasons why? What could you gain from this? And what could you lose from this? And if you really think that through, you're going to find out, if the pro list is longer, you're already maybe on track for something. If the cons list is longer, you either
We actually
keep
had
thinking it through until the pro list is more on your side. Don't make stuff
you could
up.
talk your
Don't make
list
bad
longer.
decisions.
You
Oh,
could
you
talk
could
your list
definitely.
longer just based on what you
100.
want it to turn out like. So don't do that. But
Yeah.
I know. Well, Mike Camparelli and Brian from Jack's Treasures in our membership
Yeah.
section, they actually had some good insight along those same lines, and that is
Yes.
is the risk worth the benefit? Like it kind of falls on that same line. The pros and cons. Is taking the risk worth the squeeze? Basically, is how they
Yes.
kind of phrased it back there, and they both had some really good points in that area. But I think the risk tolerance for me, it's hard for me to think back to that. It really is hard for me to
Yeah.
think back to that because I'm so tuned to it now that it just doesn't phase me to make a big decision very
Yeah.
quickly. But
Well,
back then, like when I first started, I didn't do that. Like I overthought everything. I was very timid about it. I
Yeah.
was scared of big decisions like that because what if I put $500 into this and then it doesn't do anything? And that would terrify me.
Yeah.
I would never move forward.
Well,
And that
before
doesn't
you go down
anymore.
that road, let's.
If you love what you're hearing on Unemployed for a Living, join the break room. As a member, you're going to get early access to our episodes. You're going to get an exclusive break room access pass sticker, and you're going to have a chance to have your questions featured on the show. It's a great way to support the podcast and become part of the conversation. So head over to the YouTube channel and click join today.
Let's back up and let's, because I think that we've talked probably in all 3 episodes about this. We keep saying risk tolerance. What would you say if we were to say, okay, now we're going to talk about risk tolerance? What would you say is a definition? Cory, how do you define what risk tolerance is?
Well,
And
I'm
what
not
might go
terribly
into that?
literate, so I would just switch the words around. I'd say it's your tolerance to risk.
Okay.
No,
Okay. Well, I guess, yes, in its simplest form, you are correct.
I think for me, it's my willingness to take a risk in the hopes of a good outcome and
Yes.
being okay with the possibility that it could all go down the tubes. And I mean, I think it's your ability to do that. I think that's what it is encompassing is just, are you willing to how willing are you to take a risk knowing it could go right or wrong?
Yeah. And I guess there's different levels. There's different levels of it. Is it going to be a high risk,
For
decision?
Sure.
Is
Some
it going to be a
decisions are way
low
bigger.
risk decision? I guess a big decision is, is now a good time to leave a secure 9-to-5 job?
I think the thing that most people kind of get hung up on is that decision you just talked about. Is it a good time to leave my 9-to-5 job?
Yeah.
Anybody asking themselves that already has all the data they need to make that decision. They just need to make the
Yes.
decision. Like you either
Yeah.
know you're making enough money to get by, or you're not
Yeah.
making enough money to get by, or your side gig is big enough to live on, or your savings is, or it's not. Like you have all the
Yes.
data. So the risk tolerance is your that will you make the decision? Like you have
Yeah.
all the data.
And
Will you make a decision one way or the other?
I guess, yeah, I like your simple form of risk tolerance is your tolerance to take a
Just flip
risk.
it.
I guess that's exactly it. Um, and I try to think through some of the decisions that I have, had to make and rated them. Um, if I had a scale of 1 to 10, I guess, one of those first big decisions when I was trying to make a decision about what I was going to do after I had left my job, um, going into reselling. As again, I had good mentors in that. I had kind of done my due diligence and watching and learning YouTube from the community, and but that's the path that I chose. Right now, that
Sure.
risk to reward is I would have to rate that decision pretty high, just because I mean, currently I'm existing, I'm surviving, I am self-employed, I make my own decisions, and it's working out for me.
It's worked
You
out.
know, day
Not that it
day
ain't
to
been
day.
bumpy.
Oh, no, 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 not at all. And it's when I'm sure that's that way with any
Anything.
I guess that's my official
The
yeah, that's
roller
the best way
coaster.
to explain
I
yeah,
honestly,
the
I
roller coaster.
just going back to last episode, one of the biggest decisions I ever made in business wise was to take that guy's money to develop those parts and software.
Yes.
Like to take $100,000 check from a person that just in a business setting
Yeah.
and not know how to do what you promised to do for that check.
Well, I
Just
think that wasn't risky or whatever. That was just balls, Corey. That's all that was
it's
to
still
go
a
in
massive risk because
and
I knew for a fact it was going to cost me at least half of that check just in R&D, just to
yeah,
figure out and learn the skills and teach myself.
yeah,
So if I spent all that and I couldn't deliver, I could give him half his money back, but I was going to owe this company 50 grand that I didn't have. I didn't have 50
yeah.
grand.
Oh, sure,
I
sure,
didn't have
sure.
that kind of money. So that was a huge risk, not just for me, but for my family too. But it wasn't uncalculated. Like I
Yeah,
said, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, this guy 50 grand, and
yeah.
it's
That's a
not the
lot
break
of
your
money,
knees kind
though.
of business. Like it's not that kind of business. And I knew I was capable of making 50 grand back for him
Yeah,
doing my own business. It might just take me a year or two.
yeah.
So,
But there
it was
again,
a
I
risk
think
that took a little calculation, but it was one I was willing to take. But
for
that
the
was a very fast decision. Like that was 10
oh
minutes
yeah,
to make that decision.
but for the average person, I think those numbers are just they're big. They're big numbers. Hey, give me a
Yeah.
$100,000. I'll do this. I'm going to owe you $50,000 if I don't. And
Well, just call it
I'm looking
$100
more.
and $50. Like just
Yeah,
pretend the numbers, whatever is kind of your baseline word. Put it this way: if somebody says, "I need you to pull out, give me this much money," what number makes your butt start to pucker? Is it $500? That's your number.
what's your butt puckering tolerance?
Yep.
That's in the
What's your
next
butt pucker
episode.
number? Like,
But I think some of those decisions in that risk tolerance or what your tolerance for risk is uh, how to manage what would you do to manage that risk. You got to set limits. You got to set limits that
you
fit
do.
within your means, either your skill set, your financial situation, the time that you have
That's an important
to
point.
put into a lot of this. You have to if you're and I think a lot of this show we're going to go with people that are either starting a side hustle, want to start a side hustle, not necessarily go 9 to 5,
And you have
be
to
unemployed.
like that. You
It's
made a really good point. You do have to have a buffer. You have to be smart about it. Like you want some money set
yeah,
beside. You want to be able to afford for the coin to land on the wrong side. Like you don't want to go in and
yeah,
make decisions with the confidence of a 12-year-old in Batman cape with no backup. Like you got to have a buffer behind you, and
yeah,
it's okay if it hurts if you make the wrong decision. Like don't be afraid to make the decision because it might hurt.
yeah.
but it
But
shouldn't
know what that
make you
risk, know what
desolate.
that
Like,
tolerance is, know what that
yes,
hurt will be. Thinking through what that hurt will be and what's the worst hurt you can get? What's the worst case
yep.
scenario
Which
if
is
you
a
try
question I ask
something
myself all the time. What's the
and it
worst that can happen?
fails? Um, so some of that, like I said, how much, and it's not necessarily putting money into a new business to start something. It
No, it
is
could be anything.
that your time commitment. How much time can you give up either away from a family or something else that you like to do? Emotional. If it's going to cause you this emotional turmoil every day, maybe it's not the best decision.
No.
Maybe you need to,
Well, and
uh,
that
but
that's a
maybe
decision
it's
too.
also the emotions are really good emotions. Maybe you're going to get just so excited and really, really go into it. So
If
that's
you're going to
that's
start
part of
building
that
a
decision.
if you're going to start building a business, are you willing to stop golfing every weekend? Like, is that something you're willing to give up? Because there's a pretty
True.
good chance if you start a business and it takes off, until you grow that business into something a little bit bigger, maybe you have to stop golfing. Maybe you don't get to go to the bar with your
Yeah.
friends. Like, there's sacrifices that you have to be willing to make. Those have to figure
Yeah.
into your risk tolerance decisions. Like, am
Yeah.
I going to survive if I didn't get to go down to the golf course
Well,
once
and
a
I
week?
guess when we talk about, what's the worst that can happen, maybe part of that decision is not necessarily losing money or losing an investment in
You're
something.
losing time
Is
with
I
family.
like what you said, losing time with family, or maybe, oh, I'm not going to be able to golf. How important is that
Yep.
to me? Do I want to make this decision to go down this road?
Fun fact:
Um,
if golf is one of the more leading factors in your decision making, then you're not very
uh-huh.
serious about working for yourself. Golf will come when
Well,
success does, but you have to be
what
willing to give it up for a little while, probably.
this is true, but I'm pretty sure there's also a lot of guys that, okay, here's an example, um, of somebody that took their love of golf,
Turn it into a
kind of
business.
and turned it into a business of, is an older guy getting ready to retire,
Yep.
from his regular job, golfed on golf leagues every week, was always out to the golf course. Um, Ended up, he knew he was going to retire from his regular job, but wasn't done working, still wanted to do the golf. So he went to a school that taught him how to repair golf carts. And he
There you
got
go.
a job on, it was his own. He didn't work
I
for the
will.
golf course. He worked for his own self, fixing the golf carts
That's a
at the
good
golf
point.
course for extra
That's a,
money and worked out great. It paid his golf fees,
but it
made
doesn't
him,
always.
after he retired.
Like,
Well, it
I've
doesn't always,
I've
but
on probably 3 occasions turned a hobby that I really enjoyed into a
mhm,
business because I really enjoyed the hobby and
yeah,
ended up hating that hobby by the time I was done. If you take
100%.
something you love and turn it into a money thing to where you have to do it,
Yeah.
you will there's a
But
fair chance you could hate it by the end. Like, you have to know that going into it. You have somehow you got to
yeah,
build some
but I don't
boundaries so
I
you
don't
don't hate
think
the
that
hobby.
I don't think that's always the case, Corey. I'm
No,
going to
I don't think it's
disagree with
always the
you
case.
because I think that's one of the things
Surprise.
we're gonna talk. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna talk about this next week in next week's episode. So come back for that is well, your skill set. Whether
Yeah.
there's a lot of times that people don't because they think they have a lack of skills that they can't start their own business or whatever. But also along that skill set is, hey, I can do this. I do well in that instance of the golf cart thing. Like the golf. But I know a lot of people who have taken their hobby that they enjoy, turned it into something successful,
Yeah.
and still they enjoy it more because now they're getting something from it. They're getting like it's almost
Yeah,
like the fruits of
and
their
I'm not saying
labor.
that's a fast hard rule. I'm just saying when you go into
Yeah.
it, kind of keep that in the back of your mind
No.
and try to build some boundaries into it so that you don't end up hating the
Yes.
hobby.
Well, but from my own personal experience is I have like a vinyl cutter, heat press, t-shirt press, all of that sort of stuff. And I love to make fun t-shirts and one off, heat press them and stuff like
Never
that.
made me
And as soon as
one.
somebody sees that you
Where's my
do, I
t-shirt?
never have made you one. I do a lot of
How
one-offs
long have we
and
known
then
each other?
I want to be the guy, with the cool shirt. I don't want to, share them out, but it's but anytime that I've had somebody, I show up and they're go, oh, that's a cool shirt or that's neat. It's like, oh yeah, I made this. I'm like, oh, and next thing you know, it's like, oh, we have our softball team and we want, we need a dozen shirts for our softball team. Or we're having this we're
Do you
having
do
this
it?
family vacation. I have done it. I have done it before. But what I found is when I'm making a project for somebody or for myself, especially I make a lot of shirts for other people, except for you, Cory, obviously. Um, that it is when I'm doing that, it brings me joy knowing that that person is going to, whether it's a gift and they're going to open that gift, or whether I just go, hey, I made you this shirt, and it brings me a lot of joy to while I'm making the project, while I'm designing it, while I'm doing whatever effort it takes to get it done. As soon as it becomes a paid job where I have to do it, I have to dedicate that
Yep.
time to it. It's not, it's like you have a due date. Obviously, people need stuff in a certain time frame. It does take the joy out of it for me.
Yep.
But what I do know is if I got past the fact that it was a hobby that I enjoyed and it was now a job of mine, and I could make good money because I could make t-shirts, I could cut, vinyl signs, I can do all of that stuff. I could do that a
Sure.
lot more than what I do now. And I could make a bunch of money at it, but I'd have to change that mindset. I'd have to make a decision. Is this, I do understand it. It's no longer going to be just for the fun and games. It is going to be a money-making venture.
Yep.
And what decisions go into that then at this point? Can I make enough money at it? Right now, I'm just charging people, the supplies. I'm going to have this in supplies and I have to buy shirts and I have to buy this
Yep.
and they're going to pay that bill. And then they're going to pay me some extra to do it, whatever I felt that time was worth. And which is usually cheap because a lot of times it's for friends or relatives or
Yep.
whatever. And, but if I can make that decision, and then again, I can look at the risk of, okay, if I want to start doing this as well as my current, reselling and stuff, where is that time? Where can I fit that in?
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, so to you can take a hobby. And I think that's where a lot of people,
Oh,
when
you
we do
can.
talk next week about skills,
A lot of people
whether
do.
people think they have a lack of skills, um, and then also being realistic about your expectations of what
Yep.
you're looking for out of a business, if you're going to start your own business, or even if you're going to do this as a side hustle to make extra income. So we'll talk about that skill set, whether you have a lack of skills, or a lot of people feel that they can't do something
Or even just how to
because,
discover
oh,
those skills because they're there.
yes,
Like everybody has a skill.
yeah, exactly. And
Matter of fact,
whether it's,
my youngest is 20. She came back to live with us while she's doing her student teaching,
yeah,
and I helped her kind of fine tune. What do you enjoy? What are your skills? What have you done before? And I think she's going to break $1,000 this month doing side gigs, just designing
really.
stuff on Upwork. Very first month she's ever done it. She just started
And
doing it because we kind of went through a process of, what do you like doing? What have you done in the past
well,
and all that. And she got that down to the point where, she decided she wanted to do some stuff on Upwork, a certain type of stuff.
yeah.
And I think she's going to hit $1,000 this month on her very first month, which
Well,
is insane.
maybe
Like
maybe
that's a great thing.
we can explore that a little bit next week, and some of those questions that you might have asked her, or
Yeah.
make her kind of look at what she could do, and maybe when we're talking about the skill set, and but being realistic about stuff,
Yeah.
maybe we can talk about that. What's that sound like?
Yeah. We might dig into some of that. Yeah. I think we
That's
could.
that's cool.
I
I
think
think
it's
that's
it's exciting. To me, watching somebody discover that, something I can do, I can make money on, like something
yeah,
I already know how to do, I can make money on. Like watching that process of somebody kind of discovering that and then just
yeah,
going and doing it and succeeding. I've had a ton of fun watching her do it. Like, and I'm not making a penny off of it. I just love watching her
yeah,
do that because you could see her get excited about it and she's doing it. And every
yeah.
night she'll come home and she's like, I made another job. And I'm like, nice.
Perfect. Well, and then a lot of that too is in that, um, making that decision, her getting excited about something. And a lot of
Yep.
that is, she's making a decision. She said, I don't know what I'm going to do for some money. And you made some decisions with your help. And she's excited about that, something that she liked to do, whether it was like a hobby or something that she already was doing and turned into that. But then it was that then to jump into that, trusting in herself
Yep.
trusting, in
Well,
herself
and
that
again,
she could do it.
she had an outside mentor. Like she knows I've
Yeah.
ran 100 businesses, so she could just say, is this dumb? Like she has that
Yes.
backdrop. But so do you, if you think about it. Somebody in your life has run a business before, or another business owner that you could go to and say, hey, I want to do this, and I think this is the direction I'm going. Just tell me if you think it's catastrophic. Like, is this a
Yeah.
horrible idea? Like
Yes.
everybody has a mentor they can go to, and if you don't, they're easy enough to find. People that run
Yeah.
businesses want to talk about them. Like
So
in reselling,
probably,
how many times have you said it's a lonely thing that you'd love to go talk about reselling with somebody?
yeah.
People who do it want to talk about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to flash up Cory's personal cell phone and home number on the screen right here below me right now.
I'll
His
talk to
email
you.
address, Instagram, and he's going to
I'm
guide
just
you.
going to make my voicemail say it's a horrible idea. It's a horrible idea.
Don't do it. But yeah, trusting, then once you have made some of those decisions, trusting in yourself, develop, you're going to have an intuition through your other experiences that
Yep.
you've had in the past,
It builds
good
up.
and
It's not
bad.
overnight.
Um, the mistakes that you made. I say that here recently that we might do that we should do an episode something about sometimes your biggest failure is your biggest success because you learned so
That's
much
what Teresa
from.
says about marrying me.
That's
Well, on that note,
yeah, exactly. Hey, thanks for joining us. No, but I guess in the end, making those decisions, doing some pros and cons, trying to really decide what's the worst that can happen. And
make
that's a
small
big
decisions.
decision.
If I had
Yeah.
to give you a piece of advice, if like for my daughter, make small decisions. Start
Yeah.
there. Like,
Yes.
should I do this? If I do decide to do it, what's the tiniest possible thing I can do? Like make those tiny decisions
Yeah.
and start building your confidence. Nobody goes to the gym and starts out lifting 400 pounds in a deadlift. They go and grab some 5-pound dumbbells. Like start small,
Yeah.
build the
Yes.
confidence, and then work
Good.
your way up.
Good advice. I like
Of
that.
course it is.
Start start small and yeah, build up to things.
You sound
Um,
surprised.
well, no, I just like the way that you put it. I like your analogies, Cory. That's what it is. I think
Oh,
that when you liken that, like when you were talking about, you want to give up golf, or just like right there, nobody goes to the gym and deadlifts 400 pounds. I'm
well,
just
certainly
gonna
not
say,
me.
oh well, start with a small decision. Don't go. I'm not gonna give that extra analogy. See, that's why I
Well,
like
I'm a
talking to Cory.
storyteller. I'm a
I
storyteller.
You are, and that's why I love our conversations that we have on the phone about this stuff. Where every time I'm like, yeah, I hadn't really
Had thought
thought
about
about
lifting
that.
weights, but now I'm feeling like going to the gym.
Well, that's probably not going to happen, but
Not here either. Not here. Unless the gym
so
is the new restaurant in town.
buffet.
They just serve Slim Jims.
I went to a buffet the other night that just wasn't that good, but
That's what you were telling me. That's not
yeah,
surprising. You said it was an Amish buffet?
it was like Amish food buffet, and everything was dry, and there wasn't much of a selection. But so as I
Well,
sat there and thought, do I want to go in? I should go into the buffet business because I could whoop these guys in no
no, you
time.
probably shouldn't. I've seen that show Amish Mafia. They'll take you out. You don't want to go compete with those guys.
Exactly,
They're
exactly.
serious.
So, Cory, I hope everybody had some takeaway from this episode. Talking, a little bit about, just making decisions, or what kind of goes into making decisions, and some things that you could do to
We
kind
talked
of
in
make
circles a
those
little
decisions.
bit. So
Yeah.
leave it in the comments below. Give us some of the big decisions you've struggled with. If you guys are
Yes.
if you've hit some of those decisions getting into working for yourself, kind of leave us a comment.
Yeah.
Let us know what you ran into and what some of the struggles were, because we may revisit this episode. We did go back and forth and a little bit around and around on this episode, but
Yeah.
it's something that everybody that has to work for themselves is going to run into. Like it's
Yes.
a big topic that we think everybody's going to encounter. So, or at least
Agreed.
I've encountered it and still do to this day.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear those. Yeah, those decisions that just exactly what Cory said. Or if you have any thoughts on a show, or or a topic, something that you think would further. Not only do we read the comments, but other folks read the comments as well, and maybe something that you're saying is going to help out.
Or
And
if you
make
just think
people,
we're full of
because this
crap, let us know.
we would, yes, we want to know that as well. But
Yeah.
I think
Or if
we
it's
want
just
to
Kent,
build this.
let us know that too.
We want to build this as a community where all of us are gaining some information and some knowledge, and again,
I'll try
and some
not
of
to
the
be
comments this
try not
week.
to be sick for the next episode. Maybe I could be a little
Yeah,
bit more on it.
that would be
My head is just cloudy today, I swear.
cloudy with a chance of meatballs.
That's a good show.
Meatballs.
Eat balls. Is that what we're going to end it?
I think so.
Meatballs.
I think so.